review them for a moment. Perhaps you've noticed that most of my sermons have been about human behavior. So, with human behavior, there's oftentimes an obvious meaning. And then there's a hidden meaning, a deeper meaning. You can be good, and then you can allow God to be good through you, for instance. There's a difference between these two kinds of good. They're opposites, actually. So, take courage, for example. That was my topic last week. You can be courageous even though you are afraid. Or you can allow God to be courageous through you. One takes self-control and the other takes surrender. Actually, self-control and surrender are not in the same camp even. So, something to think about. Now, a quote to continue this thought, a quote from Star Trek 2009. Spock's father, Sarek, says, "Speak your mind, Spock." Spock says, "That would not be wise." What is necessary is always wise, his father says. You can see the inner struggle which is in Spock's face as he is struggling with these ideas in his head. And he says, "I feel anger for the one who took Mother's life. And this anger that I feel, I cannot stop it. It just keeps on coming up. There's nothing I can do. It's there. It's coming up." And he is Vulcan, emotionless, but as it turns out, they hide it well. But then Sarek says this: "I believe that she, meaning their mother, his mother, would say, 'Do not try to.'" Interesting. And so for Spock, this was a revelation. You can see his face relaxes and the anger is gone. Now, why would that be? The more you attempt to control your anger, the tighter it becomes, like a tick lodged in your skin, not willing to budge. Your muscles become tight, which stops the flow of subtle energy in your body. The moment you surrender to your anger, it evaporates. Why is that? Because in that surrender, your muscles relax, and the energy begins to flow as it does. And you cannot be angry and surrender. They are opposites. So that brings a little bit of something that I observed from Yogananda's teaching that I'd heard from other places, but I liked very much how he expressed that, how the tension in your muscles. And I think I'm going to give a talk on that one of these days, because that's really at the core of much of our problems is the tension, chronic tension that we build up in our bodies. And there's ways to release that: singing, prayer, sleep. Anyway, we'll talk about that some other time. Now, here's my talk I have for today. And Marv, perhaps you'll know this guy. His nickname was Bear Bryant, a legendary coach of the Crimson Tide college football team. He had a secret upon which he built all of his success. When Bryant showed his team clippings from the previous games, he only showed the places when they starred, when they did a fantastic job. He never showed them places where they made mistakes. And as a result, the Crimson Tide kept on winning like no other team. I think that year, the thing said they won 80% of their games, something like that. It was phenomenal. So his secret: building positive energy in the minds of the team players. I mean, it looked to them like they couldn't make a mistake. Now, in Africa, about the turn of the 20th century. So funny, we can no longer say the turn of the century. The turn of the 20th century, a long time ago, there was a shoe manufacturer, and they sent a sales representative over to Africa to try to expand their market. And he spends a few weeks there in a foreign land, and finally the salesman dispatches a telegram to his home office warning, "Disaster, disaster, these people don't wear shoes. Cancel production immediately." Later that year, a salesman from another shoe company came and traveled in the same region, and also hoping to increase his company's client base. Soon, he sent a telegram to his home office, but this one said, what do you think? Opportunity.
Yep.
Opportunity. These people don't wear shoes. Triple production immediately. So, whatever you concentrate on becomes the foundation of your next experience. Whatever you concentrate on becomes the foundation for your next experience. So, in unity, it says here to pause. That wasn't much of a pause, was it? I get wanting to just rattle on. But the unity movement, it has a great message. One of peace, inner peace and world peace, of love and gentleness of spirit. The list could go on and on. We know what the list is. There's another part, which goes hand in hand with the message. In fact, this other part is so important that the message cannot even exist without it. It is the messenger. You can't have a message without a messenger. For instance, Martin Luther King Jr. had a great message, but it needed him to deliver it, or the message wouldn't have gone anywhere. Many missionaries were sent to the Greeks to preach the gospel of Christ, but it took Paul to convert them. He and he alone had the power to bring the message home to those people who lived along the shore of the Mediterranean. In unity, we have a message. And guess what? We are the messengers. What kind of messengers are we? In what ways can we improve our skills of delivery? Let's explore this question with an imaginary conversation with Bill. Okay, Bill tells us, when I'm asked to be a greeter at church, shake everyone's hands, and as they enter the chapel, I cringe. I fail every time. I know the problem. I'm just not friendly. Sad but true. What do you mean by that, Bill? Well, I observe Jane, how she loves everyone and everyone loves her. She oozes love. Her smile tells the whole story. The members gather around her and want to shake her hand and say hello. And but not me. And that's because I'm just not that kind of person. I find myself standing alone with my hand ready to shake theirs, but it looks more like a dead fish than a willing hand. Bill, would you show me what you mean by going down this aisle and shaking hands with these people the way you ordinarily do it? Well, this is the part you have to imagine. Bill complies by doing his normal, unimpressive job. Then I say to Bill, okay, I see what you mean. Now, will you go down this aisle again and shake hands with people the way you see Jane doing it? Oh, Bill squares his shoulders, gets a little different look in his eyes, a little different tension in his muscles as he tries to demonstrate how Jane did it. Imagine him being an immediate success while following Jane's example. Now, you can listen in as I share with Bill the famous what if principle. If you want to have a quality, act as if you already have it. If you want to be friendly, act as if you are already friendly. How long does it take to become friendly? Just a quarter of a second, just long enough to say, oh, I'm going to do the as if principle. And so if you want to be brave, act as if you're already brave. Don't go around telling everybody how scared and weak you are. That's not going to make you brave. You know why? What is that? I'll go back up here. Whatever you concentrate becomes the foundation of your next experience. So now, as a general rule, in the theater, the actors should live their part. In the case of Bill and his use of the as-if principle, his success was a result of his becoming a channel for Jane's unconquerable spirit. In his mind, he had become Jane. Bill says, okay, we've solved the handshaking problem, but I can't concentrate. Everybody, let's say it together. Bill, what do you plan on doing about it? Huh? What do you plan on doing about it? He might have heard you. There's nothing I can do. I just can't concentrate. It's the way I was born. I spent 2 years in Texas. Actually, Provo would do. They had mill mentality. We have it here. They just, I don't have to go to high school. When I get old enough, I'll get a job at $18 an hour like my dad did at the steel mill, and that's all I'm going to do. Well, the steel mill went out of business. Guess where they ended up? Anyways, but so there's a thing about this kind of attitude, you know. I was born this way. Have you noticed that sometimes we are under the sentence to remain as we presently are? Well, that's not really right, is it? It's just a thought. Yet one of the most exciting ideas is the possibility of changing ourselves for the better. Now, William James, one of the most influential philosophers of the 1800s, said, "The greatest discovery of my generation is that we can change our circumstances by changing our attitude." A lot of people want to change their circumstances, but few are willing to change themselves. Change is suggesting action. The first action you must take is to change your attitude. Oh, now there was this young father, and he stood at the kitchen window looking out at Sammy and his 6-year-old son. He was amusing himself in the backyard with a baseball and bat. And the boy kept tossing the ball up in the air. You ever done that? I used to do that. Swinging at it and missing. And in fact, he's missed every single time. Finally, the father could stand it no longer, and he decided to go out and say something encouraging to his son. So he goes out there, he puts his hand on Sammy's shoulder and soberly tells him, "Well, son, I guess you're just not cut out to be a hitter." Hitter? Sammy returns quickly. "Who cares about hitting? I'm going to be the greatest pitcher there ever was." Okay, failure is an interpretation, not a fact. Let me tell you about Shinto. Shinto is the original religion in Japan. They have a habit of worshiping kami, their name for God, through beautiful spots in nature. If you follow a path up into the hills in Japan, you are more than likely going to find yourself at a beautiful, beautiful view. And along with that, you know, and they expect you to go up there and see this view and then contemplate kami. That's why they make these paths. And you will also probably find a Shinto shrine there to commemorate the spot. The story goes that there's this old philosopher, and he goes up into the hills, just like I said, each day. And when he comes back in the afternoon, she is met by a group of people in the village wanting to be taught what she learned from the beauties of nature that day. So one afternoon, following her lecture, this man comes up and he says, "Could you please tomorrow bring a rose, so I may contemplate its beauty and further think about the beautiful message that you gave us today?" And she says, "Okay." And someone else comes up and, "Could you bring me a hawthorn twig, you know, so I may contemplate the message therein?" And then the third person comes up. There's always three in these kind of stories. I don't know, but it just sounds better. The third person comes up and says, "Can you bring me a lily?" And so, yes, and yes, she goes out walking the next day and comes back, and they meet her at the gate. And she hands the rose to the first man, the hawthorn twig to the second, and the lily to the third. But the first man looks at it and says, well, there is a thorn on the stem of my rose. And the second person says, "Well, there's a dead leaf clinging to my hawthorn branch." And the third one, being encouraged by the other two, says, "Well, there's dirt clinging to the roots of my lily." And so the old philosopher takes back the rose, the hawthorn twig, and the lily, plucks off the thorn and gives it to the first, plucks off the leaf and gives it to the second, and dusts off the dirt and puts it in the hands of the third. And she says, each of you now have what you were attracted to. You may keep them, and I will keep the rose, the twig, and the lily for the beauty I see there. Now, what are we attracted to? That's a good question. And here is kind of a very philosophical comment here that sums up this whole part of my talk, really. Every human being has been given two creators. One is God and the other is himself. The creation of man is not something that was finished and done with in the Garden of Eden. The creation of man is still going on. It is taking place today. It will take place. It took place last week, and it will take place next month. It's going on. And guess what? You are the creator. So it's just not God. It's a team effort. What are you going to do with your half of the creation? There is another way we could approach Bill's difficulty with shaking hands. Bill could shake hands as if he was a channel for God. That it was our Creator who was shaking their hands. As the hymn tells us, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. What do you think this would do for Bill's ability to give the message of love and fellowship to those entering the chapel? This reminds me of a story about Donald Walter, later known as Kriyananda. When he was a newly acquired devotee of Yogananda, Yogananda asked Donald to stand outside the Hollywood church on Sundays and shake hands with everybody after the service. But after shaking so many hands, he felt lightheaded, drained of energy. And he says, "Sir," afterwards, "Sir, I don't feel ready for this job." I read his book, and he said that a lot to Yogananda, and he always got another answer. But that, replied the master, is because you are thinking of yourself. Think of God, and you will find his energy flowing through you. The advice worked. After fulfilling his duty the next Sunday, Donald actually felt more energized and uplifted, not less. The most widespread disease in the world is the inferiority complex. Inferiority. When we think of inferiority, is that right, man? That is what we get. But when we allow God to live through us, we become a messenger for his love. The mind, like the dyer's hand, is colored by what it holds. If we hold in our hand a sponge full of purple dye, our hand becomes purple. And if we hold in our mind and heart ideas, great ideas of honor, righteousness, industry, and the love of truth, our whole personality will be colored accordingly. The primary occupation of life is taking a mob of appetites and organizing them into an army of ambitions. And I like that one so much, I want to say it again. The primary occupation of life is taking a mob of appetites and organizing them into an army of purposes and ambitions. But we don't have to do this alone. Professor Dumbledore said, "You will find that help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it. Likewise, our Creator is ever ready to lend us a hand in this grand adventure of ours to finish the work of creation in us. We are a team, this life force of ours and us." Fear, on the other hand, is useless as a means of making a positive change in our life. Trust, however, is paramount. While we are co-creating with our life force, we are also at its mercy, and we must learn to trust that it is on our side. Now, When I was growing up, I was told hundreds of times or more that thoughts must be controlled, but no one told me how. The mind is like a stage, I was told. During every waking moment, the curtain is up. There is always a thought being performed on the stage. It may be a comedy, it may be a tragedy, interesting or dull, or good or bad, but there is always something playing on the stage of your mind. So now that I'm older, actually, that is not true. My teachers were wrong when they said that their only choice is what thought will fill our minds. The first choice is between thinking and silence. That is how we control our thoughts. When faced with thoughts which we wish to control, go into the silence. Oh, notice this thing again. Surrender and control. You shouldn't even use the word control there. If you want to control your thoughts, go into silence and surrender. Therefore, you're no longer controlling. And they solve themselves. The silence does it. Silence is one of our great superpowers. Silence is the key to be able to make effective decisions and having the courage and conviction to stand behind those decisions. So what is silence? It is what we look like when we step back into the moment before our world of thoughts and feelings came into existence. It is our true nature. This silence is a place to which you can turn for rest and release from fear and care. It is a holy place. Stillness fills it. The peace of our Creator is in it. There your mind becomes like a little child's, lovely, pure, and true. There your thoughts are stayed on things that are good, just, and merciful. It is easy to quiet our mind when we are in the solitude of the woods, right? It is easy to become noisy in a crowd. Just wait till our dinner starts after this. Man, I'm hungry. And the real challenge is to hold on to the peace of your solitude when the crowd is doing everything it can to unhinge you. Let me say that again. The real challenge is to hold on to the peace of your solitude when the crowd is doing everything it can to unhinge you. And I'll have to add in the story. I've told this several times, probably you've heard it, but I'm going to say it again. They were talking to this monk, and there was a horrible upheaval, political things, almost war breaking out, and he was there and kind of in charge of some parts of it, trying to help. And the man said, How are you remaining so calm through all this turmoil? I could never do this. How are you doing it? And the Buddhist monk replied back, I never leave the place of my meditation. The silence goes with him into the chaos. So, the solution. Pray until you become aware of your core primordial self, the silence within. Pray always, pray night and day into this silence until you lose the power to stop. In that moment, your heart will be so full that a drop will overfill it, and you will have become a channel for God. Now I'd like to sing a song, and then we're going to have silence for you to contemplate the song and the meaning of my words today.